Hi everyone, my name is Hannah Mercer. I'm 33 years old. I flew 6 hours through a storm for my dad's birthday, showed up at my parents' front door with a gift in my carry-on and rain in my hair, and my brother opened the door just wide enough to block the hallway and told me I had flown all that way for nothing. Behind him, I could see everything. That was the part that hurt first. Not the words. The view, gold balloons tied to the staircase. A chocolate cake on the dining table with candles waiting to be lit. My mother's good crystal catching the warm light. My aunt laughing near the fireplace. My cousin holding up his phone to take a video. My father in the middle of the room, wearing the navy sweater I bought him 2 Christmases earlier, smiling like the evening had not been missing anyone, like I was not standing outside in the rain. My brother Caleb kept one hand on the edge of the door, not open. Not closed. Just enough space to let me see what I had been excluded from. "Hannah," he said, like I was a package delivered to the wrong address. I was still holding Dad's gift bag. The tissue paper had gone soft from the storm. My suitcase was beside me on the porch, one wheel stuck in a little puddle. I had been awake since 4 that morning, delayed twice, rerouted once, and spent the last hour in a rideshare crawling through flooded streets because I wanted to surprise my father for his 60th birthday. I had imagined his face. That was the stupidest part. On the plane, while turbulence shook the cabin and the woman beside me prayed under her breath, I kept picturing Dad opening the door, his shocked smile, Mom putting both hands over her mouth, Caleb rolling his eyes, but secretly glad I came. Everyone saying, "You made it." I should have known better. Families like mine don't reward effort from the daughter they trained to chase the room. They just move the room. Caleb looked down at my suitcase. "You didn't get the hint?" I blinked. "What hint?" He gave a small laugh. Not loud, not cruel enough for witnesses, just quiet enough to be private and cowardly. "It's family only tonight." For a second, I thought I had misunderstood. I looked past him again. My grandmother's sister was there. My mother's best friend was there. Dad's golf buddy was there, holding a drink under a balloon that said, "Best dad ever." Family only. The phrase was so lazy it almost collapsed under its own lie. "I am family," I said. Caleb's face changed slightly. Not guilt. Irritation. Like I was making him work too hard to keep the door shut. "Don't do this," he said. From inside, someone called, "Who is it?" Caleb turned his head halfway. "No one." No one. That word entered me quietly. I think the worst injuries do that. They don't explode. They sit down somewhere inside you and start unpacking. Then I heard my mother. "Caleb, close the door. Your father's about to cut the cake." She knew. Of course she knew. The door had a frosted glass panel beside it. Through the blur, I saw her shape moving in the hallway. She did not come to the door. She did not say my name. She did not pretend surprise. She simply waited for my brother to finish removing me from the evening. I looked at Caleb. "Dad knows I'm here?" His eyes flicked away. There it was. The answer. My father knew his oldest daughter had flown across the country through a storm and was standing outside his birthday party, and he stayed by the cake. Caleb lowered his voice. "Look, this night is supposed to be easy. You always make things heavy." Heavy. That was what they called truth when it interrupted comfort. I had not come to argue. I had not come to demand anything. I had brought a gift, a handwritten card, and the kind of hope a grown woman should have retired years earlier. "What did I do?" I asked. The question came out smaller than I wanted. Caleb sighed. "Hannah. Just my name." Like that explained the crime. Behind him, Dad laughed. A big laugh. Full, warm. The kind he used at parties, for clients, for neighbors, for anyone who did not know what it sounded like when he went cold at home. Something in me went still then. I looked at my brother, at the narrow opening, at the bright house behind him. Then I handed him the gift bag. He didn't take it. so I set it on the porch between us. "Tell Dad happy birthday," I said. Caleb looked relieved. That hurt too. He had expected me to cry, to plead, to raise my voice so everyone inside could say I had ruined the night, after all. Instead, I picked up my suitcase. The rain had gotten heavier. My coat was soaked through at the shoulders. I walked down the porch steps without looking back. No one followed. Not my mother. Not my father. Not even one relative curious enough to ask why a woman with a suitcase was leaving the birthday party before the candles were lit. I made it to the end of the driveway before my phone buzzed. For one wild second, I thought it was Dad. I thought maybe he had realized. Maybe he had stepped away from the table, checked the hall, seen the gift bag. 23 minutes later, the panic started. Part 2, 5. The panic started with my mother. 3 missed calls in under 2 minutes. Then Caleb. Then Dad again. Then all 3 of them at once, like the family had suddenly discovered my number was a shared emergency resource. I was sitting under the awning of a closed pharmacy 2 streets over, trying to get a ride share that kept getting canceled because of the storm. My suitcase was dripping onto the concrete. My shoes were soaked through. My hair had gone from carefully blown out for Dad's birthday to woman recently evicted from an emotional disaster. I watched the phone vibrate in my hand and felt almost nothing. That scared me a little. Not because I wanted to cry, because I didn't. For years, my parents survived their worst behavior by counting on my reaction. If I cried, I was too sensitive. If I argued, I was ruining the night. If I swallowed it, they got to call the evening lovely and post pictures afterward. But that night, something in me had gone cold enough to stop feeding them. My mother finally texted, "Where are you?" Then another, "Your father sent that by mistake." Then Caleb, "Stop being childish and come back." And then, "Dad, I need to talk to you. Call me now." I stared at that one longest. Need? Not, "I'm sorry." Not what Caleb did was wrong. Not, "I should have come to the door." Need. That was my place in the family every time. Needed when useful. Invisible. When human. A black SUV finally pulled up. The driver rolled down the window and looked at me with the kind of pity strangers reserve for women standing alone in bad weather, with luggage and the wrong expression on their face. "Airport hotel?" I nodded and climbed in. The heater came on full blast. My hands stung as they warmed. Halfway there, my Aunt Denise texted, "Honey, where did you go?" I looked at the screen. Aunt Denise was Dad's sister. Not exactly brave, but not cruel either. The kind of woman who spent years lowering her voice around bad behavior instead of stopping it. In my family, that counted as almost kind. I wrote back, "Home wasn't open." 3 dots appeared immediately, then vanished. Then came, "I saw your suitcase by the front door. Caleb said you forgot something." I laughed out loud. The driver glanced at me in the mirror. I said, "Sorry," and looked back at my phone. That was the family method, in one sentence. Humiliate first. Rewrite fast. I typed, "I didn't forget anything." He told me, "Family only." This time, the dots took longer. When her reply came, it was only 3 words. "Oh, Hannah." Not outrage. Not shock. Just recognition. That hurt more than if she had denied it. Because it meant what happened on that porch fit too neatly into the old pattern. It had happened before. Not exactly like this, but close enough that nobody in the family would choke on the shape of it. By the time I reached the hotel, Dad had called 11 times. Mom, 9. Caleb, 6. Brooke hadn't called at all. That made sense. My younger sister only contacted me when she needed a favor or an alibi. Caleb got the spotlight, Brooke got the softness, and I got the emotional janitorial work that kept everyone else's evening clean. At the front desk, while the clerk searched for my reservation, my phone buzzed again. "Dad." I let it ring out. Then another text came. This is ridiculous. People are asking questions. People. There it was. Not, I want you here. Not, I treated you badly. Not, your mother and brother were wrong. People were asking questions. So now it mattered. I took my room key, rode the elevator to the 4th floor, and dropped my suitcase just inside the hotel room door. It was one of those airport rooms that smell faintly like detergent and old air conditioning. Beige curtains. Beige carpet. Beige sadness. I sat on the bed and finally let myself think. 6 weeks earlier, Dad had called me out of nowhere. Not unusual, but not common either. He preferred conversations where I listened more than spoke. He said, "You're still coming for my birthday, right?" I said yes. Then he asked, too casually, "And you remembered the cedar box?" Of course I had. The cedar box had been sitting in the back of my closet for almost 8 months, ever since Grandma died. She left it to me specifically, with one instruction written on a tag tied to the handle. For Richard's 60th birthday. Hand to him personally. I remembered staring at that tag at the funeral and thinking it was the most like Grandma thing imaginable. Private. Precise. For a moment, the hotel room seemed to shrink around me. The rain tapped against the window. The heater clicked. My phone kept lighting up on the bed like a warning signal from another life. Dad called again. Then Mom. Then Caleb. I didn't answer. I set the cedar box on the little desk and stared at it. Grandma had not written, "Give this to your father." She had written, "Hand to him personally." And now I understood why. She wanted me there. Not because Dad deserved a birthday gift from me. Because the gift was a test. And he had failed it before the candles were even lit. My mother texted again. "Hannah, this is not the time to punish your father." I almost smiled. Punish. That was what they called it, whenever I stopped absorbing consequences that belonged to them. A second message appeared. "Please come back. People are waiting." People, again, not your father is sorry. Not Caleb should not have done that. Not we should have opened the door. People are waiting. I picked up the cedar box and turned it over in my hands. There was a tiny brass lock on the front, but no key. At least, not visible. Grandma had always hated obvious hiding places. When I was little, she used to hide spare house keys inside hollow curtain rods, emergency cash behind framed recipes, and birthday cards in old cookbooks because, as she said, people who grab fast rarely look carefully. I ran my fingers along the bottom of the box. There it was, a thin strip of tape. Under it, a small flat key. I peeled it free. My hands were steady, which surprised me. The lock clicked open softly. Inside was not a watch. Not old cufflinks. Not the kind of sentimental birthday thing I had expected. Inside was a folded letter, a flash drive, a small stack of printed photos, and a copy of an old deed with my grandmother's name at the top. My mouth went dry. The first photo showed my father standing beside Grandma on the porch of her lake cabin years earlier, smiling with one hand on the railing. The next showed me at 19, painting that same railing in cutoffs and an old college shirt, my hair tied up, white paint on my cheek. I remembered that summer. Dad had said the cabin needed family help. Caleb was too busy with an internship. Brooke had a beach trip. Mom said heat gave her migraines. So I spent 3 weekends scraping old paint, hauling trash, cleaning gutters, and sleeping on a lumpy sofa while Dad told relatives we were restoring the place as a family. As a family meant I worked, and he narrated, there were more photos. Me carrying boxes. Me sanding window frames. Me asleep at the kitchen table, sunburned and exhausted. On the back of one, Grandma had written, "Hannah did the labor. Richard accepted the praise." I sat down hard on the edge of the bed. The deed copy had a sticky note attached. Ask him what he thinks he is receiving tonight. My phone rang again. "Dad?" This time, I answered. For 2 seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "Where are you?" No apology. No shame. Just the question of a man who had misplaced something useful. At a hotel. He exhaled sharply. This is ridiculous. Come back with the box. With the box, I repeated. Mom's voice came through faintly in the background. Ask her if she opened it. Dad snapped away from the phone. Quiet. That told me everything. They knew something was in it. Maybe not exactly what, but enough. Did Grandma tell you what was inside? I asked. Dad's tone changed. That box is for me. Only if you learned how to keep your daughter inside the house. Silence. It was the first honest sound he had made all night. Then he said, lower, you had no right to open it. I looked at the photos spread across the bed. My hands. My work. My life documented by the only person who seemed to notice when I disappeared into service. She left the key taped underneath. She was old. No, I said. She was precise. Dad breathed hard through his nose. Hannah, listen to me carefully. That box contains private family documents. Funny. I thought I wasn't family tonight. He said nothing. That silence did more than his accidental text had. Because now he knew there was no clean way back to authority. Caleb's voice appeared in the background. Is she coming or not? Dad covered the phone badly. She opened it. Someone gasped. Maybe, Mom. Then Dad came back. You need to return here immediately. Why? Because the toast can't happen without it. There it was. Not the party. Not the birthday. The toast? Grandma had arranged a public moment, and they had arranged to exclude me from it while still using what I carried. What toast? I asked. Dad hesitated. I looked at the flash drive, then at the deed, then at Grandma's letter still folded in my lap. I said, actually, I think I'll call Aunt Denise. Hannah, don't you dare involve other people. I almost laughed. There are 30 people in your living room. That's different. No, I said, that's witnesses. I hung up. My hands shook, then, not from fear exactly, from the strange force of finally refusing the script. I called Aunt Denise. She answered on the first ring. If Richard lets Hannah stand outside his door, do not give him the cabin. I stopped breathing. Aunt Denise said, Hannah? I read the next line silently. If he has learned nothing by 60, then the house goes to the one person who kept showing up without being invited. My phone buzzed with another text from Dad. Last chance. Bring the box now. I looked at Grandma's letter. Then at the rain sliding down the hotel window. Then I told Aunt Denise, put me on speaker when they start the toast. Part 4-5. Aunt Denise did not answer right away. Behind her, I could hear the party through the phone. Laughter. Plates. Someone saying they needed more candles. My mother's voice floating over the room like nothing had happened. Then Aunt Denise said very quietly, Hannah, are you sure? I looked at Grandma's letter on the hotel desk. If I come back, they'll control the room. A pause. And if you don't, I swallowed. Then Grandma does. That was enough. Aunt Denise stayed outside while I read the letter twice. Then I photographed the first page, the tag, the deed copy, and the picture of me painting the cabin railing at 19. My hands shook as I sent them to her. Not because I doubted the truth, because proof has a strange weight when you finally stop carrying it alone. 5 minutes later, she texted, they're gathering for the toast. Then, your father is holding up an empty gift bag. I stared at that sentence. The gift bag. The one I had left on the porch. Of course he had brought it inside. Of course he had turned even my rejection into a prop. Aunt Denise called. I answered without speaking. At first, all I heard was the room. My father's party voice. Warm, polished, full of charm. He never wasted on closed doors. Well, Dad said, I know Mom wanted tonight to be special. She left me something before she passed, and Hannah was supposed to bring it, but apparently travel made things complicated. A few people chuckled softly. Travel. Not the locked door. Not Caleb blocking the hallway. Not the accidental text. Just travel. My throat tightened. Aunt Denise's voice cut through the room. "Richard!" The laughter stopped. Dad said, "Denise, not now." "Yes," she said, "now." There was a shift in the audio. A phone being moved. A chair scraping. Someone whispering, "What's going on?" Then Aunt Denise said louder, "Hannah is on the phone." The room went dead quiet. I could almost see it. My father standing near the cake, smile frozen. My mother stiff beside him. Caleb looking at the floor. Guests glancing between them, trying to understand why a daughter with a suitcase had vanished from a birthday party. Dad's voice came sharp. "Hang up," Aunt Denise said. "No." That was the first time I ever heard her say that to him. One syllable. A lifetime late. But real. I took a breath. "Happy birthday, Dad." Nobody spoke. Then he said, too controlled, "Hannah, this isn't appropriate." I looked at the cedar box. Neither was making me stand on the porch after a 6-hour flight. A murmur moved through the room. Dad snapped, "That is not what happened." Caleb's voice came in fast. "She showed up upset." I almost smiled. There it was. Rewrite number 1. I said, Caleb opened the door just enough to block the hallway and told me, "You flew all this way for nothing. Family, only tonight." Silence. Then Aunt Denise said, "I saw her suitcase." My mother whispered something I couldn't hear. Dad raised his voice. "This is a private family matter." "No," I said. "You had 30 people waiting for Grandma's box. That made me public when you needed me. I'm only staying public now that it hurts." The room went silent enough for me to hear rain through Aunt Denise's phone. I unfolded Grandma's letter. Grandma wrote a condition on the box. Dad said, "Hannah," I kept reading, "for Richard's 60th birthday. Hand to him personally. Only if he has learned how to keep his daughter inside the house." Someone gasped. Maybe Aunt Carol. Maybe Mom. Dad's voice cracked through. "That was your grandmother being sentimental." "No," I said. "That was Grandma being exact." Then I read the first line of the letter. "If Richard lets Hannah stand outside his door, do not give him the cabin." The room changed. Even through the phone, I could feel it. The warm party air turning cold. My father said nothing. I continued. "If he has learned nothing by 60, then the house goes to the one person who kept showing up without being invited." Aunt Denise was crying now. I could hear it in her breathing. Dad said, "Stop." I didn't. Richard has spent years calling the lake cabin his dream because he enjoys being seen beside work Hannah did. She painted the railing. She cleaned the gutters. She packed the trash. She drove me to appointments, brought groceries, and stayed after everyone else found better things to do. If the family tells this story, they will call it devotion to Richard. I am writing it down because the truth is simpler. Hannah kept showing up, and he kept taking credit. My father exploded. "That's enough." But the damage had already entered the room. I heard people whispering. The cabin was not just property in my family. It was status. It was the place Dad mentioned at every barbecue, every business dinner, every birthday toast. The place he called our lake place, even though Grandma had refused to transfer it while she was alive. And now everyone knew why. Aunt Denise said, "Richard, is this true?" Dad barked. "You don't understand estate matters." Then another voice came through. Older. Male. Calm. My Uncle Martin. "I understand a condition." That was when my father stopped sounding angry and started sounding afraid. Because, for a second, I was back on the porch. Rain in my hair. Gift bag in my hand. My brother calling me no one. Then I opened my eyes again. "I didn't do this to him," I said. "I just brought the box he thought he could receive without bringing me inside." I read the final paragraph. "If Hannah is outside, the cabin transfers to her. If Richard argues, show the photos. If Linda cries, let her. If Caleb says this was a misunderstanding, ask him how wide he opened the door." No one breathed. At least, it felt that way. Then Dad said the worst possible thing. She was never supposed to open it. There it was. Not grief, not apology, not shock. Proof. The room heard it, too. Aunt Denise whispered, "Richard." Dad tried to recover. "I mean, no," Uncle Martin said. "You meant exactly that." My phone buzzed with a new text. "Caleb, you just ruined him." I looked at it, then at Grandma's photos spread across the bed. Me, with paint on my cheek. Me, carrying boxes. Me asleep at the kitchen table, while Dad smiled in the doorway behind me. I said into the phone, "No, I think Grandma waited to see if he would ruin himself." Then Uncle Martin asked the question that finally cracked the party open. "Richard, where is Hannah's chair?" No one answered. Not Dad. Not Mom. Not Caleb. Not one person in that beautiful, warm, full house could explain why the daughter carrying Grandma's final gift had nowhere to sit. Part 5. The Silence. The silence after Uncle Martin's question did more damage than my reading ever could. Where is Hannah's chair? It was such a simple question. That was why nobody could survive it. My father could argue about documents. My mother could cry over timing. Caleb could say I misunderstood. Relatives could pretend family conflict was complicated, because complicated sounds kinder than cruel. But a chair was not complicated. Either there was a place for me at the table, or there wasn't. Aunt Denise's phone picked up the room in pieces. Someone shifting. A glass being set down. My mother whispering, "Richard." Then Dad, quieter now, "This has gotten out of hand." I looked at Grandma's letter. "No," I said, "it finally got witnessed." Uncle Martin asked Aunt Denise to send him the photos I had sent her. I heard the low murmur of people gathering around a phone. Then another silence when they saw them. Me, painting the railing. Me, carrying boxes. Me, asleep at the cabin table. Me, standing in the background of Dad's proud stories, doing the work he called his... My father's voice came back strained. "Those pictures don't prove ownership." "No," Uncle Martin said, "but the deed condition might." That was when I knew the party was over. Not because people left immediately, because the room had stopped belonging to Dad. My mother finally spoke into the phone. "Hannah, please come back. We can fix this." I almost believed she meant it. Then she added, "People are upset." There it was again. People, never me, always the audience. I looked around the hotel room. Beige carpet, wet suitcase. Grandma's cedar box on the desk. For once, the emptiest room in the story felt safer than the full one. "I'm not coming back tonight," I said. Dad snapped, "Then you're choosing this." "No," I said. "You chose the door. Grandma chose the consequence." I ended the call before anyone else could pull me into another circle of explaining pain to people who had watched it happen. The next morning, Aunt Denise came to the hotel. She brought dry clothes, coffee, and the gift bag I had left on the porch. The tissue paper was ruined. The watch box inside was still intact. She looked exhausted. "I'm sorry," she said, before she even sat down. I waited, not because I wanted to punish her, because I had learned to let apologies prove whether they had more than one sentence. She folded her hands around the coffee cup. "I'm sorry I saw parts of it for years and called them awkward instead of wrong." That one reached me. Awkward. That was a word families use when they want cruelty to keep its manners. She told me the party fell apart after I hung up. Uncle Martin asked to see the original deed paperwork. Dad refused. Caleb accused everyone of turning on him. Mom cried in the kitchen until Brooke took her home. Guests left in clusters, whispering under umbrellas, carrying birthday cake slices no one wanted anymore. Dad did not cut the cake. That detail stayed with me longer than it should have. 2 days later, Uncle Martin drove me to meet Grandma's attorney. Her name was Patricia Vale, and she had Grandma's exact energy, calm eyes, sharp pen, no appetite for performance. Patricia confirmed the condition was real. Grandma had placed the lake cabin in a trust. Dad would receive it only if the cedar box was delivered to him by me, in person, at his 60th birthday gathering, and only if no credible evidence showed I had been excluded from the event. I almost laughed when Patricia said credible evidence. What counts as evidence? I asked. She slid my father's accidental text across the table. Unbelievable. She really thought she was welcome. Then Caleb's text. You just ruined him. Then the photo Aunt Denise took the next morning of the folded chair still against the wall. Patricia tapped the stack once. Your grandmother did not trust emotional people with emotional facts. She preferred records. Of course she did. The transfer took months. Dad fought it at first, loudly, then expensively, then quietly, when Patricia sent the full file to his attorney, and I stood on the porch with the key in my hand and remembered every version of myself that had shown up there. 19-year-old me with paint on my cheek. 24-year-old me bringing groceries when Grandma's knees got bad. 33-year-old me flying through a storm, still believing effort could earn entry into a house that had already decided against me. Inside, the cabin smelled like cedar, dust, and lake air. On the kitchen table, Patricia had left one final envelope from Grandma. Hannah, if you are standing in the cabin, then your father failed the simplest test I could write. Let your daughter in. Do not let anyone convince you this is about property. It was never about walls, wood, or water. It was about whether a man could recognize the child who kept arriving for him, even after he taught her she might not be welcome. If he could not, then the home belongs to the one who understood what showing up costs. I sat at that table for a long time. Then I opened every curtain. Months passed. Dad sent one letter through his attorney calling Grandma's condition vindictive. Patricia sent one back with no emotion at all. The trust disagrees. Caleb texted once, "You got what you wanted." I wrote back, "No, I got what Grandma protected." Then I blocked him. My mother called on my birthday. I let it go to voicemail. She cried, said she missed me, said the family had lost its way, and asked if we could start over. Maybe someday I will answer that question. But starting over does not mean walking back through the same door and pretending it was always open. Aunt Denise visits the cabin now. So does Uncle Martin. Brooke came once and stood on the porch for 10 minutes before saying, "I should have come outside that night." "Yes," I said. She nodded. No defense. That was all I needed from her in that moment. The next year, on Dad's 61st birthday, I did not fly anywhere. I stayed at the lake. I painted the railing blue. Not because Grandma liked blue. She didn't. She said blue made houses look like they were trying too hard to be charming. I painted it blue because I wanted one thing at that cabin to be chosen by me. At sunset, I sat on the porch with tea, watched the lake turn silver, and thought about the birthday party I had crossed a storm to attend. The balloons. The cake. My father laughing inside. My brother blocking the hallway. That accidental text glowing under a streetlight. For a long time, I thought being excluded meant I had failed to become lovable enough. Now I understand something simpler. A locked door says more about the person holding it than the person standing outside. And Grandma, in her final ruthless kindness, made sure that if my father left me in the rain one more time, he would not get to keep the house I had spent years helping him pretend he deserved. Thank you for being here. If you were in Hannah's place, would you have gone back to the party with the cedar box? Or would you have let Grandma's condition speak for itself? And if your family made you fly through a storm just to leave you outside, would you ever try that door again? Tell me in the comments. And if this story stayed with you, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'd love to see you in the next one.